Hey y'all, thanks for joining me today. Today I'm actually going to go over something that you have requested and a lot of you have probably experienced. It's your tension being off, whether you're sewing and you're seeing uneven tension with your sewing or your embroidery, or you're getting like that bird's nest, that globbing up underneath. All of that can be a result in just your tension being off. It's really simple to fix. I do want to say before we get into this, before you start touching your tension, make sure your machine is threaded correctly. Sometimes it can be as simple as just making sure your foot's up. You might have left it down and didn't go the tension properly. Make sure all those boxes are checked, because if you didn't thread it properly and then you adjust your tension and then you rethread it, you kind of just knocked it off when you had it on before, when it was just a little mistake and missing something on the threading. So make sure that you check your threading, change your needle, top and bottom thread. And if you're still having that consistent problem, I'm going to show you how to fix it. I got some samples of what it should look like and what you don't want it to look like, and I got some different bobbin cases to show you how to adjust it. All you're going to need is your bobbin case and a little tiny flathead screwdriver. Alright, so first I'm going to show you some examples, and we'll start with just regular sewing, and then I'm going to go into the embroidery on a couple different machines. So this is the top, this is the bottom. This first stitch right here, I'm going to try and make sure I take the time for everything to focus. On the top looks perfect, but when I flip it over, you can see that the stitch doesn't look like it does on the top. Especially up through here, it's just really, you can see that top thread kind of getting pulled back down. And this is a really good example for sewing. That your top is too loose or your bottom is too tight. There's a couple ways to fix that, and I'll get into those in a second about different machines. The next sample, this is the back, and then I look on the top and it looks really bad. This would be the exact opposite of that. So basically this is your bottom is too loose, your top is too tight. A lot of times when it looks this bad, it's usually going to be a threading error. I had to adjust my bobbin case a lot to even make this sample to look that bad. So it's pretty hard to get to that point. So yeah, and then this third one here is just kind of a conglomerate of me adjusting it to get it back to perfect. So the best way to tell your sewing tension is to use a zigzag stitch, because you want it to look the same on both sides. So you can see how good that looks on the top. Now flip it over and it's the same. You want it to look identical. All right. So this is basic embroidery. So this is like a test that I like to do when I service machines, because it's going to give me the most feedback on what the tension looks like. I got some notes on the back, so that's how we're going to kind of get to that point. These two look great on the top. This one is obviously pretty messed up just by looking at the front. But for these two, this one right here, you can really not even see any bobbin thread. My bobbin is white, and you want to be able to see some. Typically a third, maybe a little less than a third of bobbin, the white. So this is generally going to be an adjustment that you would do on your bobbin case. Most embroidery machines are going to have auto tension, which you can adjust it and it really just doesn't do much. So this is going to be too tight on your bobbin case, so you would need to loosen up that bobbin case, which I'll show you how to do. This right here is the back of this one. This is that bottom is too loose. Your bobbin case is distributing way too much thread too easily, and you can see on the top it's not always that bad. I just made it kind of dramatic. It can be as much as just seeing a little bit of red, where I'm using red, on your edges. That's not really great. This, on the other hand, is what I like to call perfect. Top looks great, there's no loops, you can't see the thread coming through, and on the back you have just a hair less than a third. In some spots you do have a third. This is textbook. This is what you want it to look like, just like that. And if you have a multi-needle machine, 6 or 10 needle baby lock brother, you got these sew out stitches. So this is cool. What it does is it does one line on each needle. so that way you can get feedback on what your tension looks like on every single needle. So these might be a little harder to see. These were custom machines, so some of the thread is a little weird. This right here, as you can see, there's too much thread coming up to the top. It's not showing through on the top per se, but there's definitely too much, and this is your bottom tension is just too loose. So you would have to crank that down just a little bit, tighten it down. This one here is a little different. So if this was the roles were reversed and this looked like this one, because that does happen, it's the same kind of deal as this. It's just your bobbin's too tight and you have to loosen it. This is just for the multi-needle people, so what you got here is kind of an assortment of different tensions. Right here's a little tight, but still pretty good. Right here is like basically perfect. This one's a little too tight. This one's a good bit too tight, and that one's a little too loose. So this is not your bobbin, because your bobbin is going to control every single one of them. That's why on this case you would adjust your bobbin, not your top dials. But this one you'd have to, make sure you're adjusting the right one. Make sure you know what your colors are, so you can adjust these 3 needles here. This one right here, this one's a little tight on the top, so I would loosen up that dial about a quarter turn, start there. Where this one's the opposite, this one's too loose on the top, so I would tighten the top dial. That's probably gonna be about half a turn. And this one is hard to see, but it's white bobbin, so this one is just a hair too tight. Too loose on the top. So you would tighten down that top tension disc about a quarter turn, and then rerun these and see what it looks like. This right here is worth showing. You can see how even though these tensions are bad, they're consistent. You have the same amount of white throughout it, where this one is not. You're getting just a really wonky looking tension. This is a good example of a bad bobbin case. What's happening is it's not keeping consistent tension, so that could even be something stuck in the tension, so that's worth a look. But ultimately you probably got your bobbin case wearing out, which happens, so replace that and you should be fine. Perfect is this one here. So top looks good, nothing coming through. All the stitches are consistent, and they're all about a third showing. Alright, so we'll start doing the adjustments with this bobbin case here. This is just a standard Baby Lock Brother bobbin case. A lot of other ones use something very similar. We'll talk about the sewing end. So going back to my original sample, this first one, if it's going to focus for me, like I said, the bottom is too tight. And if you have a machine where you can adjust your top, you can do that for the time being if it's just off a little bit like that. Like for instance, where you see your top bit on the bottom when you're sewing a zigzag, tighten down your top a little bit, 1 or 2 numbers. But if you have an auto tension or you want to go ahead and adjust it, I typically like to keep all machines on a 4 and adjust this to work with that. So we're seeing that top on the bottom. You're going to locate this screw right here. You're not always going to have a color, but it's usually always going to be a flathead screw that's on the left of the 2 screws. And you can even see where it holds in and kind of pulls and sandwiches the tension. So we got too much top on the bottom. We're going to take this screw and I'm going to loosen it about a quarter turn. And then I'm going to sew another zigzag and see what it looks like. On the flip side of that, this one right here really messed up. If it's like that or even remotely like that, you're sanding your bottom on the top, you're going to do the opposite. So you're going to take that same screw and go about a quarter to a half a turn depending on how dramatically off your tension is. But you typically want to stick to like quarter turns. A little goes a long way with bobbin cases, and it's best to just do micro movements, test it, micro test it, than doing big turns and having to find that happy medium. It's working the same way on a bobbin case like this for these machines. You got this going on, you're going to tighten it up. Start with quarter to half turns, do another embroidery, you can just do like an A. I usually do A, B, C, or more, just so I can see the consistency of it. I want to make sure it's not just a fluke, something weird's happening, and I want to make sure it's actually a problem. So this one, our bobbin is too tight. So gonna loosen that screw up, quarter turn, test it out until you get that right there. If you're sewing with like a metal bobbin case, it might look something like this. A lot of them are real similar. These have usually just one screw. They might have more than one on it, but this particular one just has the one. So you know which one is going to be controlling it. If you have more than one screw, you want to just find the flathead screw that is right along lines where this shim sandwiches your thread. So there might be some other ones holding some stuff together, but this is the one you're going to want to adjust. And it adjusts the same way, lefty loosey, righty tighty, in accordance to what you're doing here. Multi-needle, 6 and 10 people have this kind of bobbin case. Yep. And this one does have 2 screws. So in this case, it's the bigger of the two. It's the one, like you can see, controls that gap right there. And when we're looking at our samples here, right here we got that bottom tension is too loose. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do just a quarter turn, and then I'm going to test all this again. It can be time consuming, but it's worth the extra time to make sure that your machine's running perfect. And then these here, like I was saying, it's going to be your top, so you have to adjust those dials on the top. Those are the same way, lefty loosey, righty tighty. And if this was flip side and you barely saw any white, you take this, you turn that screw to the left, quarter turn, test it, see what it looks like. Thank you all for watching. I hope that helped you out. Do remember that all these What's Wrong With My Machine videos are just to get you out of a pinch. I'm not making you a certified technician. You still need to bring it in to get everything professionally looked at. The best way to avoid tension problems of any kind is get your machine serviced like annually. Your technician is going to look through it, they're going to test its tension out, and they're going to make the adjustments that I just talked about. Make sure that your bobbin case is still in working order, it's not going out. That way you hopefully wind up not in pinches where you have to do this, but it's most likely going to happen if you're doing a lot of sewing and embroidery. So that's why this video is here. I hope that answers some questions for you. If you do have any, drop them below. Keep sending me requests, any questions y'all have. I got a couple notes I'm working on for the next couple videos, and I hope y'all keep them coming so I can keep this thing rolling. Thank you.